So, welcome everybody to May's Lightning Talks brought to you by Women in GIS, the Professional Development Committee. May is Public Safety Month, and we have two speakers for you today. But I want to give a shout out to our platinum sponsors, the University of Wyoming's GIS Center, Esri, Bad Elf, and Embedded Alliance, as well as our other sponsors here. They, as well as members, are the reason why we can provide content to women in GIS, and we are really excited about these monthly lightning talks. It's been, we're learning how to handle all the different logistics of it, but we're excited about it because it's something that we can put out to the public that Women in GIS is doing. So we're just excited about this new effort and love hearing these quick stories from everyone in our industry. So today's presenters, we have Carley Fitzgerald, and she'll be talking about GIS solutions in county emergency operations centers during Hurricane Ian, and Robert Horne, who's going to talk about public safety GIS being a special niche within an already very niche profession. So I'm going to let Carley go ahead and become the presenter.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Sure can.
Awesome. Am I good to go? All right, thank you, Caitlin. My name is Carley Fitzgerald. I am a GISP. I am the GIS manager for Highlands County Board of County Commissioners. And let me just jump this slide forward. A little bit of background. Highlands County is located in Central Florida, Central South Florida, and it's a rural county with approximately 100,000 residents. GIS, historically in the county, GIS has been largely underutilized until about 3 years ago. Up until that time, it was mostly for addressing purposes or to make an odd map here or there as needed. And since that 3-year mark, we have been building out our online applications. And since emergency management is one of my interests, that's the one that I've been working on a whole lot of. And since we had Hurricane Ian last year, I have some more information to share about that. So what I wanted to tell you about today was our dashboards and our experience builder applications that we built specifically to capture like damage information, as well as provide situational awareness in the EOC. So this kind of started with the citizen damage reports. You'll see on one of the next slides here, I'll show you kind of the time frame, how that started and how many things we've collected with that. And then I created a county snapshot dashboard, which then kind of, as I took more FEMA ICS courses, molded itself into a situational awareness dashboard using some words that would score me a little higher in Scrabble there. But then we moved on to this collective dashboard / hub for Hurricane Ian response. And so for the response, it was a Saturday afternoon in March last year in 2022, and I am sitting in a community board meeting. I'm the president, and I was running this board meeting, and I get a phone call from our EOC manager, and I'm like, oh no. And I pick it up. I knew there was supposed to be severe weather that day, but I pick it up. Carley, do you think you can put together a way for citizens to report damage, or even just for us to go out and collect hail damage? Because there's been a hailstorm that came through. Yeah, no problem. I told the board at the meeting I was sitting at, I'm like, hold on just 1 minute. And I sit down with my phone and in 5 minutes put together this really simple form. It's what you see on the upper right. It just collects what the date was, the address, comments, and then they can upload up to 3 pictures of damage. So in March, we had 23 collections of data points, and that was just our emergency management crew going out and collecting stuff from the field. And then in April, we got hit with back-to-back historic rain events. It got a little crazy there. In April, we had areas flooding that didn't normally flood, and the areas that did flood were absolutely inundated. Our county PIO pushed that damage assessment form out to the public for the first time. Now that we've kind of had a baseline that it works and we can collect this data, they trusted it enough to push it out. We collected about 260 images from different citizens around the county that felt like uploading their information. And then we had a nice couple months of peace and quiet until Hurricane Ian came by. And right after Hurricane Ian, we also had Hurricane Nicole. So for that 2-month stretch between Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Nicole, we had 468 damage reports collected from the citizens. And did I skip one? I'll go back to it in just a second. So we were collecting damage information from the citizens, and occasionally some of our own county employees would also jump on there, and if they drove past something that was really damaged, they take a picture of it and upload it so that we could see it in the EOC. So this is that first dashboard that I was kind of telling you about. We had this up on a television in the EOC so that anybody in the room, in the war room, could see a snapshot of the situational awareness of the county and get an idea of what's going on. Everything from live weather radar and active watches, warnings to hurricane forecast tracks. You can also see the outline of our county there. So they could get context of how close it is. And we also have a map here for 24-hour rainfall accumulation. It also has satellite flood extent. We also collect other weather stuff like wind direction and speed, wildfires and hotspots, shelter capacity status, and citizen damage reports, electric outages, live traffic, and even Florida Highway Patrol monitored crashes, closures, and incidents. This was the first thing that was created. This was kind of a, how can I show our EOC the most information that would be relevant to them, but not too confusing. If they wanted to know if there was a road closure or a traffic accident that Florida Highway Patrol was monitoring, they could come to this site. They could see what live traffic looked like, all kinds of different things. And then it kind of molded into something that we used for activations as well. And one more tab was added to this. The next one that was added was a live snapshot page. So this second tab of the dashboard included webcams from around the county. We have some, I think it's 7 weather stations positioned around the county that we pay for with live webcams. So I take 1-minute snapshots and put it up here so it refreshes every minute. And then each one of these windows can also be selected over to the live weather tab to see some relevant information like temperature, pressure, wind, rain rate, things like that. You can also follow links to see the 24-hour time lapse or go directly to the station information. So this was kind of what we worked through and worked with for those quiet months in the middle of the year before Hurricane Ian came, just kind of letting the sheriff's office, fire rescue, and the EOC become familiar with this. Find out what they liked, what they didn't like, stuff like that. So as I mentioned, Hurricane Ian came, reared its ugly head. And so we moved into a response for Hurricane Ian. And here's just a couple pictures of the dashboards on display in the EOC. This was the calm before the storm. It was right before landfall. It was probably during landfall, but it was right before it got to us. And I got some killer pictures here of emergency management staff, public information officer, and deputy fire chief, all standing there gathering information from these boards. And you see up on the wall, those 2 that I just showed you, that main page, and then the one with all of the snapshots that show you what the current conditions look like in the county. So that night was rough. I'm not gonna lie, that was a rough night. I've done a couple other activations before, but it kind of fizzled out, or it wasn't that bad, or turned before it got to our county. There was a number of things that went wrong that night. Our EOC had some power issues. The power started flickering. The TVs kept going down. Our computers kept going down. The fire chief decided to evacuate the EOC in the middle of the hurricane. We had the eye going over the storm, and in order to keep the EOC up and running, he made the decision to move us to another facility that was up and running. So that was an adventure in and of itself. I've never evacuated a very safe building in the middle of a hurricane. So also that night, while we're in the middle of this evacuation, I was also notified that I would be doing the damage assessment, the rapid impact assessment after the storm. And could I put together an application for them to conduct that in the morning? So when someone asks if it's been a rough week, and like, yeah, does it show? And to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like, next morning, we get back to the EOC, the power is fixed, and we start doing our normal operations. That dashboard that I showed you where it shows damage reports submitted by the citizens, we started immediately. The PIO was pushing that out to the citizens. We started getting damage reports back in. Everybody in the EOC was able to stand there at the monitor or at the screens and start seeing all of this damage information come in. It was incredibly useful to have this information and crowdsourced really quickly from all over the county, remote areas, as well as areas that were hard to get to, of damage around the county. The PIO was able to create these videos of some of those pictures, and over here on the right is kind of what that looked like on that dashboard. You could scroll through these different submissions, see details and location, see the map, the total number of damage surveys, as well as pictures that were submitted. So as far as the initial damage assessment, what I put together that night while we were being evacuated was a really quick experience builder application. I took the US National Grid 1 mile by 1 mile zones and laid it out over the county and turned each one into a tile that could be selected and rated for flood and wind. And they told me they wanted it rated, I think it's 1 through 5 and how severe it is. And they wanted those 2 ratings, and they wanted a way to know if that tile had been viewed yet. So put together that experience builder application. This is kind of like what it would look like on a cell phone. They can use their GPS to zoom into what tile they're on. Select the map, it'll bring up that tile. And then after driving through that neighborhood, through that area, they would give it a rating for flood and wind. That data on the backside, we replaced the live weather pictures with these 2 maps for what those tiles started to come in looking like. I color coded them based off of severity, flood and wind severity. And we were able to determine areas that we needed to send resources to for flooding, whether that be road and bridge or humanitarian, making sure everybody is evacuated if they need to be. And while this was up on the screen, we also started getting people from FEMA, from FDEM, and a ton of other agencies, National Guard, coming in and seeing this and wanting this data. So one of the things that I created was a application using Experience Builder again for FEMA, for them to go out and this was a couple of weeks after the storm, started walking up and down every street and helping people with public assistance forms for FEMA assistance. And what we were able to do is provide them those tiles on a map as a sort of heat map, as well as the pictures and locations that citizens submitted damage. So before they walk up to a house, they could check their map. Did this house actually submit damage, and have an idea going into things where they're at and how bad things were. And when you zoom in, you could even see address numbers for address points around the county in case they needed, if they got lost or if they needed assistance figuring out where they're at in their surveys. Also part of the response, about a week after the storm, we didn't receive a whole lot of rain, but the counties north of us and upstream of us were absolutely inundated with rain. And since we had already had a very wet year, our ground was saturated as well. But this is a picture of the Kissimmee River. We started to get, about a week after the storm, started getting accounts from some of the mobile home parks along the river that the water was coming up. And there was news stories for the counties north of us about how the South Florida Water Management District was holding a whole bunch of water and keeping it from coming downriver and flooding those counties. So flooding became a big concern for the county. So I put together another tab on the dashboard for flood. It has a DEM layer, a building footprint layer, and it's kind of as simple as that. It just allows the users to kind of search through some of those areas that we're aware of alongside the Kissimmee River and look for homes that might be under a certain elevation. About a week and a half after the storm, there was a flyover of aerials that we were able to get. So I created a quick little comparison slider so that we could see this is the Kissimmee River. You'll see the river, it moves from north to south, and it's kind of on the right side. That's pre-storm. And on the left, you can see how far that flood came up into some of those agriculture areas and started flooding homes. As far as recovery, I know I'm a minute or two over, so this is the very end. As far as recovery, I do have a couple pieces of information here I was going to share. We had about 440,000 cubic yards of debris removed in the county. It took about 10 weeks to pick up all of that debris. We had 2 roads that were completely washed out and needed extensive repair and closure. And about 87.6% of the customers in the county were without power at the peak of the storm, and schools were closed for 4 days. We had, even about a month after the storm, I had a phone call from Habitat for Humanity looking for information about damage through the county. So we were able to help and assist them, figuring out areas and neighborhoods that would benefit from them reaching out. And as far as future developments, there's a couple different things here. We're going to redo how we do our rapid damage assessment. So on the left is the draft idea of kind of how they wanted it laid out. It's going to be a whole lot more detailed with more staff rather than just those 1 mile by 1 mile grids. We're going to look at public facilities and infrastructure, businesses, and residences. And over on the right is something else. That situational awareness dashboard is great when you have a large monitor or a screen in an EOC. So I'm working on reformatting that for mobile devices so that they can see that information from the field. And that is my talk. My email's down there at the bottom right. If you have any questions, I'm not sure if we factor time into questions or if I even ran over that, but that was everything that I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Carly. No, I was going to, last time we saved questions until the very end, but I think then folks forgot the questions they had for the earlier speakers. So I would like to open up the questions for you, Carly, right now, if anyone has any. I don't have a question. Oh, I see Jamie has a question. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, Carly, that's pretty awesome. First of all, amazing. I think if I heard you right, you created a form using your phone. That yes. Was pretty amazing because that would drive me crazy on a little screen. But I was curious to know, I noticed that when some of the shots you showed for the experience builder had fonts that were kind of small, hard to read, but then you showed one in the yeah, that one, go back. That blue one you just showed, that one right there. And look at how big the well, you just went away again. Anyways, the fonts were nice and big. So I noticed, did you test them on the big screen so everybody could see them while they're in there in the EOC? Because that looked really great.
For example, for like this one isn't something that was seen in the EOC. This was formatted for field collection.
Oh no, I meant the other one. You go back to that one that's kind of blue. That one right there. That one looks great.
I have an office in the EOC just outside of the war room, but I have a window into the war room, and this TV is set up just outside of my room, and I have a nice window so I could view it. So as I was building it, I would, drag it up there and see how it looked real quick and then make any formatting edits that I needed. So thankfully that one I was able to build in the EOC and test immediately. For example, the other dashboards, I do have a big monitor here in the office outside of the EOC, but I do typically go into the EOC every now and then, and I'll test stuff and make sure it looks okay up there.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're able to test it. Anyways, thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering why, or if you could give a mention as to why you chose Experience Builder I guess instead of just using a plain field maps app, or
That is,
I mean, I know you can embed dashboards and applications inside Experience Builder. I don't know if there was an advantage to sort of wrapping it within that.
that is a great question. And the reason being is we are fairly restricted by our IT department for what we can have and use. And at the moment, we cannot put applications on any work phone. So Survey 123, field maps, collector, all of those things that would be very easy to get this done, we cannot put on county phones. We are working on getting that implemented for this coming year. So for this storm, I kind of had to, put that thinking cap on and say, well, how do I get this onto people's phones without those applications? And that's why I went to Experience Builder and just built a website that housed the editor tool and the map.
Okay, that makes total sense. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome, Carly. Yeah, I used to work for a municipality, and our emergency, well, both the police and fire were really wanting to do something like this. And I don't work for them anymore, but I'm definitely going to share the YouTube video for them because they would love applications like this. We aren't in any hurricane area, but we do get flooding, tornadoes, etc. So great work. That's really cool. So, all right. Anyone else? Otherwise, we can have more questions at the end if you think of something. Okay. All right, so next we have Public Safety GIS, a special niche within an already niche profession with Robert Horne. And you should be able to, as co-host, you should be able to share your screen, Robert.
Yeah, I can. However, I was not as creative as Carly, and I don't have slides. I just have something to show at the very end. So I will leave that down for now so I can see my notes. Hello, Robert Horne. I'm a GIS nerd with over 30 years experience in GIS. And in fact, I got my start in GIS in 1992 after a hurricane in Florida. So I can sympathize with Carly on all of the trials and tribulations she had of going through that. I went through several of those myself, and it is a lot of fun. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you folks about today. Working in or getting into this this niche of public safety GIS. Working in emergency management absolutely cemented my desire to have a career in public safety GIS. Currently, I lead a team of 8 technical and GIS professionals at Mission Critical Partners, and we're tasked with solving the many problems that face 911 leaders across the country, across North America. MCP is a public safety focused consulting firm. We have work in 48 states across the US, as well as with the federal government and several Native American tribal governments as well. But the vast majority of my work experience has been in public safety, which traditionally is a very reactionary field. And so, of course, I procrastinated on choosing a topic for this talk until today. And of course, I was stumped when I started thinking about it when it came up that, hey, dummy, you have to talk to folks here in a couple of hours. So I reached out to my team and I said, why do you guys work in public safety GIS? And they gave me some fantastic answers. And I decided I can talk about those and relate them back to my experience over the last 30 years and hopefully convince folks that you guys may want to give it a try, give it a go in public safety GIS or help talk your friends or family into doing it as well, because we are experiencing a great shortage of GIS professionals in public safety. I see folks moving from one job to another pretty much every day. We have clients calling us in a panic because their person left for maybe not even better pay. Just we had a gentleman leave his job this week because the neighboring jurisdiction was offering to pay for his master's. Same salary, same commute, but pays for that master's, and so he took that job. We have folks moving for just benefits. A woman I've worked with for 20 years changed jurisdictions because the health insurance was better and she was ready to start having kids. So she decided it was time to make the move. So getting back to the answers from my team on why public safety GIS, the first answer was variety. There's a wonderful variety of work. As a consultant now, I have 16 active projects in 7 states. There is no chance that I'm going to get bored working on one particular thing. These projects are very different in what they do, and they range from strategic planning to designing and building dashboards and common operating picture integrated systems. In intelligence, which is where I spent the bulk of my career. I did 18 years in intelligence in DC. I never knew what each day was going to bring. Every day was something new. Emergency management, same thing. I would wake up in the morning and you never knew what was coming along. Was it going to be the Navy Yard shooting? Were we going to have some dignitary come in and cause traffic jams? Were we going to have snow or a microburst that leveled buildings? It was always something fun that came along with working in emergency management. Law enforcement was probably my favorite, mostly because it was not quite as reactionary. I did a lot of predictive analytics. And when I got it right, and the outcome of the what, the where, the when of what was going to happen next, and where we needed to focus, when I got that right, there was a huge rush that came with that, which leads us to the next answer, which is feeling valued. Almost everything that we work on in public safety makes a positive difference in outcomes. We see those impacts every day, and become a vital part of public safety, of responding to events, of predictive analytics to help events not happen, and the value of that position far exceeds anything else I've done in my career. Real estate, GIS, Department of Transportation, GIS, planning, zoning, that kind of, I did all of those as well, tax parcel mapping, and the public safety stuff really provided the most value at the end of the day. One of my folks was adamant that excitement was the driver behind her joining or pursuing a career in public safety. The pressure to perform when lives depend on my ability to do my job is thrilling. That was her response. And I had to agree with her. That was a huge reason why I got up in the morning every morning is, was I going to have to work to save lives today? And eventually that pressure got to be too much. 18 years of doing that, and I didn't sleep well at night anymore. But knowing that I made a real difference, it gave me that sense of self-worth. That large part of my career that I did work in a classified environment, if you decide or you have interest in going that route, a consideration that you really need to focus on is how much do you like to talk about your job, your successes, or your career with your family and friends? I got into the intelligence field before I had kids. And so my kids grew up in the early years of their life. My wife is a teacher, and so they could ask her about what she did during the day. That was a big part of our family time in the evening. Was we'd sit at the dining room table and we'd talk about what we did. Both of my kids went to pre-K and kindergarten and up through school, and we would sit and talk about our days. And when it came to me, I really couldn't share much about what I did that day. So my family grew up thinking, oh, gee, he makes maps. That's great. For me, it wasn't a real big issue because my family quickly gets bored when I talk about my job now. So I kind of embraced the fact that I didn't have to share a lot in those early years. But I do have an anecdotal story about that. One of the events that we had in DC when they built their new baseball stadium, the Pope came to town, and I got to ride in the FBI's sniper helicopter. They strapped me into the sniper vest and in the chopper, and I got to hang out of the helicopter and take pictures of the stadium because they had finished building it, and the first event was a couple of weeks after they finished, and we didn't have any ortho imagery or anything for situational awareness of the stadium. And so I shared that with my daughter's preschool. Hey, this is what I do. I make maps, and showed some of the pictures that I took and a picture of me hanging out of the helicopter from the ground and stuff like that. And I thought it was pretty awesome. I thought preschoolers would absolutely love that kind of stuff. What they took away from that was the Potomac River is so polluted that it's brown. And I jump out of helicopters for a living. And that's the only two things they took away. So just know that your job is not going to be shared glamorously if you work in that environment, and the parts that you do get to share probably won't reflect at all what you got to do in real life. So all of that to say, we have a very dire need for folks with GIS skills in public safety right now. One of the projects that I've worked on for the last 2 years is with the National 911 program, studying the issues, the roadblocks, the barriers to success in migrating our 911 system to the next generation of 911 that uses geospatial call routing, locates the caller, does a point and polygon query, and then routes that 911 call based on your actual location, instead of the existing system that uses tabular static data and for cell phones just uses tower location for routing those 911 calls. So if you've ever called 911 and had to be transferred to another answering center, or called a PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, if you've ever been transferred, the reason is because they're using 1960s flat table technology to route those 911 calls to the right call center. And we're just now getting to the point to where we're implementing geospatial technology to take care of that. So the project that we've worked on with the National 911 program touched on the industry's perception of what's blocking success. And I apologize, my dog's about to go nuts. Blocking success and some recommendations on how we can make that better. And we came up with a couple of ideas. One was the data supply chain and issues in getting the GIS data in timely fashion to the next gen 911 standards. And the other one is the staffing issues. We just don't have enough staff for the open positions. So I'm going to share with you a resource If you will go to 911.gov, that is where we are going to have all of the reports that come out of this study. And under 911.gov, in the resources tab are documents and tools. And we will have published here, right now they've only published what was completed through January, and we just completed this project in early April. So those expected to be up here in the next few weeks. But we will have the reports, the current status of the GIS industry, strategies for overcoming the roadblocks, and then a call to action document for how groups like Women in GIS can promote public safety GIS, can perform outreach and promote that to other businesses, government, funding sources, grant opportunities, things like that, and really push that forward. So if you have any interest at all in public safety GIS, please reach out. I can walk you through it. I can point you in the right direction. The only downside to it is if you like to work in sweatpants and flip-flops like me, if you're in that, in the 911 realm, the likelihood of getting to work remote is very slim, simply because everything else in 911 is an on-site job, whether you're answering the phones as a telecommunicator, fire and police, EMS, they're all on site. And so the freedom to work from home has is greatly impacted by the environment, the atmosphere that surrounds public safety. But we're trying to change that as well, and showing the great work that we can do remotely is helping to curb that. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll take some questions.
Thank you, Robert. Does anyone have any questions? Jamie?
Thanks. I didn't really have a question, but I just have a comment. I think your advice and your information is excellent, especially for this group, in how to get into the public safety field and what you need to know for that sort of career. I applaud you for your work that you've done, and I think a lot of people are going to, even in just government, what you said, you get into that field because you want to help and you want to make a difference. And I really appreciate you doing that. And hey, thanks for making a difference. My son's a police officer, and I know that's public safety is a tough racket.
It is, and you're right. We don't get into it for the money. We get into it because we want to make a difference. But I still make more than my wife, who's a teacher, so I feel good about that.
That's good.
We aren't as abused as teachers are.
And just going off of your NG 911 comments, I know, so I live in Wisconsin, and that's been a mandate that all of our PSAPs have to go from the original E911 to the next generation 911 data schema. And so I know that it's a huge feat to overcome, getting all of the different counties and PSAPs, and because the different like the basic boundaries, it just differs across all the different regions. And so it's kind of like herding cats is what my my county 911 person said. It's just really difficult because townships and a lot of volunteer firefighter groups, like they've been doing things a certain way for a long time, and it's difficult to get all of these groups to work together and change the software systems and data sets. So
Very much so. Any gaps or overlaps in those polygons can delay call routing. So we really want that edge matching. The topology has to be spot on. And if it's not developed in WGS 84, the right flavor of WGS 84, there's a dozen flavors or so, then the transformation tools, because transformations are so complex and you're trying to spread it across the entire globe when you do WGS 84, the math is too complex to be exact. So if you develop in state plane this and your neighbor develops in state plane that, and then you both transform into WGS 84, even if you had the edges matched prior, it's going to create gaps and overlaps. And so retraining folks to develop in WGS 84, to understand the complexities of the transformations and the importance of having that topology intact. And then looking at it across the industry, you have next gen core service providers who are taking those polygons and shoving them into the 911 system. And if they do any transformation work at all, then we're creating more errors as we do that. And that's been a huge issue. So if you absolutely love transformation math and that kind of stuff, then you could pretty much write your own ticket in the 911 field.
Yeah, definitely. I used to be the addressing authority for our municipality, and that was a whole other thing, is that all these different addressing schemas trying to pile all into one NG911 data source, and everybody does addressing a little bit different. So yeah, I applaud you for the work that you do. Actually, I really felt that I was making a difference too in my own little way when I was in that industry. And so I really hope that this inspires others to work in public safety. So does anyone else have any other questions for Robert or Carley? Okay, well, with that, I would like to thank everyone for coming today. You can access our recordings of the monthly themed lightning talks on our YouTube channel, and I will copy that link here and put it in the chat. And next month, our theme will be around equity and belonging. So using GIS or studying geographies of equity and belonging. So we do hope if you or someone you know working in maybe a social justice type GIS, we would love to hear you talk. And that will be on June 2nd at 12 p.m. Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. All right, thank you everyone for being here. Have a great weekend.